Hello, I'm Roberta Blackman-Woods, MP for the City of Durham and Shadow Civil Society Minister.
Welcome to the Sustainable Communities Conference. Tell us what the Labour Party's view is of the big society when it comes to delivering sustainable communities.
Well, it's interesting for us because we think we put a lot of the foundations in place for the big society, and by that I mean giving additional support to the voluntary sector, who we often in government refer to as the third sector, and also trying to devolve power to communities where we thought that was possible. So we also, in the later stages of the Labour government, were looking at social enterprises, mutuals and employee-owned companies as a way forward in terms of developing our public service agenda. So I suppose we think that we put some of the fundamentals in place, building on the voluntary sector activity and effort that had been there for hundreds of years previously. But there are things that I think we would do differently that give us a little bit of scepticism about where this government's going with the big society.
Give us an example of something that you would be doing differently right now had you won the election.
I think we would not be withdrawing money from public services at the level that the current government is. What we would be doing would be looking for efficiencies, looking for different ways of working to make services more responsive, but seeing that very much as a partnership between the state and the voluntary sector, rather than the voluntary sector stepping in to necessarily take over state services that are not being provided because of the withdrawal of funding.
Bearing that in mind then, and particularly your answer about putting in place some of the fundamentals, what do you see now? What else do you see has to be introduced? What initiatives should be introduced to build on what you say is already there?
Well, I think it's very interesting. In fact, what came out in this morning's discussion is that it's all very well talking about localism and talking about local communities building their own housing, for example, or delivering local services. But if you want to achieve that, you have to deliver the means. And I think what we haven't seen enough from the government is what are they actually going to do in terms of, for example, are local communities going to be able to draw down a fund that will enable them to buy land and to be able to bid against the private sector to be able to deliver houses for their community? Are they going to be able to get money to buy buses that will enable them to be a social enterprise and run local bus services, because they may not be there because of the withdrawal of a local authority grant? So what we haven't really seen is what I refer to as the framework of support. What is this framework going to look like? And is it going to be strong enough and have enough resources behind it to enable communities to really deliver services locally?
You've already made the point that had Labour won the election, they perhaps wouldn't be making the similar level of cuts at this point with reference to sustainable communities. What else would you draw out from your presentation?
I think that while we would have continued to encourage charitable giving and philanthropy and see it as a very important element in our whole society and indeed the development of civil society, we want people to give more if they're able to.
But everybody wants everybody to give more.
I'm not sure.
No one's going to discourage that, are they?
I'm not sure we would have put such a central role on philanthropy in terms of delivering what we would have seen as vital public services. And I did say that this is not nuancing, although it might sound like it, because I think we would have wanted to keep the state as the final arbiter in making sure that communities have access to good quality public services, and not perhaps wanting to see such huge variability that means some communities, particularly the most disadvantaged, end up not having services because they don't have the local volunteers to run them. And that, I think, is a very important difference between the two approaches.
What do you think the value of today's conference will be to the delegates who are here from around the country?
Oh, I think getting more information about the big society to begin with is very important, but also thinking about how some of these big sustainability agendas, how to get green jobs growing, how to make our communities more sustainable, to make our energy use more sustainable, and marrying those two different concepts is really quite difficult and quite challenging. And I think today we saw delegates starting to ask some very sensible questions about how they will be married, but also getting more information, particularly from the civil servants, I'm sure is very helpful.
Roberta Blackman-Woods, thank you very much.
Thank you.